The Olympics, right? Now, do you know what movie that's from? Chariots of Fire. Did you know that Chariots of Fire, that's a biblical image? Do you know who gets in a chariot of fire? Elijah. Yeah. Elijah. Yeah. And Elijah. People love Elijah. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know what the whole chariots of I don't know the connection like in the movie to Elijah is. But it's an Olympic thing, so I figure, hey, you gotta rock the Olympics this morning. And Elijah is a very, everybody knows Elijah. At Passover, I don't know if you knew this, but some Jewish families will leave an empty place setting for Elijah in case Elijah rides his chariot to their house and shows up, right? And then Jesus goes up on the mountain with Peter, James, and John, and Elijah shows up with Moses, and it's just kind of weird. And so Elijah is this great monster of a man, a great man of God's word. And the thing is, we're not going to be talking about Elijah. No, we are going to be talking about somebody that gets a little confused with Elijah, and his name is Elisha. So say Elisha. Elisha. And we are going to be looking at Elisha over the next few weeks to learn about and look at what faithfulness is all about. The reason why we're looking at faithfulness is because we're in this series on the fruit of the Spirit. So we're going to do this quick: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. Because the Lord is good and His love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. And so, because God is faithful, we can be faithful. We can be faithful to God, and we have the power to be faithful to each other. We have the power to make commitments and follow through on those commitments because the Lord is good and His love endures forever, and His faithfulness continues through all generations. And if God is faithful, and if God loves us, and if through Jesus Christ we have a relationship with Him, Jesus' life, death, and resurrection for us, if that is true, and if we believe that, then we can be faithful because God is faithful, and we are faithful through God. Not on our own power, but through God's power. And last week we looked at the difference between faith and faithfulness. And faith is what we believe. And so here at Bridges, we believe that Jesus lived. Jesus died on the cross. Jesus rose from the dead for you and for me. That's what we believe. And everything else, kind of doesn't, it matters, but that's the core. If you and I agree on that, we can pray and love Jesus all together. That's what we believe, that Jesus lived, Jesus died, and Jesus rose from the dead for you and for me and for everybody. That's what we believe. And if that's what we believe, what faithfulness is about, if that's what we believe, then how we behave is going to be influenced by what we believe. So if Jesus lived and died and rose from the dead, and during His life He had some teaching, then we should behave in a way that would follow Jesus' teaching, because that means we are followers and disciples of Jesus Christ. So if what we believe, that should have an impact on how we behave. And then James 2:17 we saw last week says, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. In other words, faith without faithfulness is really no faith at all. So we're going to be looking at what faithfulness is all about. And what we will see, not this Sunday, sorry about this, but what we will see later is that faithfulness can raise the dead. Elisha's faithfulness can actually raise the dead. So that's we're going to see how that works. But let me tell you a little bit about God demonstrates His own love for us, His own faithfulness for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were in rebellion against God, Christ died for us. Why? Because He loves us. We don't deserve it, but God is faithful to us even when, especially when, we are not. So while we're still sinners, Christ died for us. That's what faithfulness looks like. And we have the power through the Holy Spirit to live this out. So let me tell you a little bit about Elisha and Elijah and Elisha, those two guys. Eli, I guess I should call them. They lived in 900 BC, and 100 years earlier, at 1000 BC, King David was the king, and he brought unity to the 12 tribes and peace to its borders, and really, for 40 years, set the stage for Israel to become a superpower. And so he passed his kingdom on to his son Solomon in 960 BC. BC, you have to work your way back. Anyway, so 1000 BC, King David. Then 690 BC is Solomon. And Solomon was this great king. He brought wealth and prosperity. He made Israel a superpower in all of the ancient world, but especially in the Middle East. Israel was the only thing on the planet going at that point. Anyway, so Solomon is this great king, and he rules for another 40 years. Great king, had some problems, but he was a great king, and he passed the kingdom on in 920 BC to his son Rehoboam. Now, David was a great king. Solomon was a great king. Rehoboam was a terrible king. He was an idiot. Solomon, his dad, was like the smartest guy ever, the wisest guy ever, and Rehoboam was an idiot. He got good advice, and he didn't take it because he was a braggart, he was braggadocious, he was an idiot. And he didn't take this good advice. He thought he was smarter than he actually was, and he really angered people in the north. And they got so angry that 10 of the northern tribes split off. There's this huge civil war, and the northern kingdom split off from the southern kingdom, so there were two kingdoms of the north in Israel and the kingdom of south, known as Judah. And the northern kingdom, every king after that next king was evil. So 722 BC, and the Assyrians came down and conquered them. So for about 200 years, the northern kingdom of Israel was evil. And it started because Solomon's son was an idiot. Well, and it's in this context of the northern kingdom that Elijah and Elisha serve as prophets of God. And the problem that they ran into is that actually, even though there was a civil war that took place, and even though their king was evil, things were actually going really well in the northern kingdom. Their economy was great. They had peace, except with the southern kingdom. There's still some battling going on. They had wealth. They had prosperity. Everything was going great, and everybody was worshiping Baal. Not the one true God, not Yahweh, but they were worshiping Baal. And Baal, I got to admit, he was a party guy. He liked a good party. The theology for Baal worship was that if they had a great party and it got Baal really interested in that party atmosphere, that Baal would bless their harvest. And that was the idea. And things were rocking in the northern kingdom of Israel. And this is the context that Elijah and then Elisha had to work, because there was this great Baal worship going on. And it made me think for a minute. I wondered, this is a little thought experiment for you, that would you rather have a great national economy and peace to our borders, that we are still, and we currently are, a superpower. We could have everything we wanted, a great economy, peace, everything's going great, except the nation totally evil. People hated each other, people sought their own thing, they did their own thing. Okay, we could have great wealth and power, but people would be evil. Or we would have righteousness, but our nation would be impoverished. Would you rather? I don't know. That's a tough question, because it makes you think about, I'd rather be wealthy, but I'd rather be, but anyway, something for you to think about this week. What would you rather do? And greed might bubble up in our minds as to what we want. But anyway, Elisha and Elijah are served to become prophets during this time when Baal worship is rocking and the Northern Kingdom's economy is rocking and they're like, Lord, what are you doing? Well, Elijah shows up, and that's where I'm going to pick up the story, because this is the call of Elisha from Elijah. So Elijah went up from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat, and there are the 12 teams of oxen in the field, and Elisha was plowing with the 12th team. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied, and think about what I have done to you. So Elisha returned to his oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant. So there are a couple of things going on here. First of all, you notice Elijah finds Elisha and he throws his cloak over him. And what that means is that Elijah was telling Elisha, God is choosing you. God is choosing you to follow me. It's kind of like when, remember Mean Joe Green in that Coke commercial, and the little kid gives his Coke to Mean Joe Green, and Mean Joe Green takes his jersey off and gives it to the kid, right? I mean, it's kind of like that. That's what Elijah was doing. He was blessing Elisha. And the blessing was that, hey, you get to be my servant. So that's the first part that I want you to notice. And then notice that, and Stephen Furtick, who's a pastor at Elevation Church, he came up with this image. So Elisha is plowing with the 12th team of oxen, right? He's plowing the oxen. And this is his job. This is his career. This is what he is doing with his life. He is plowing with oxen. And he's behind the plow. And you know the saying that unless you're the lead dog, the view never changes? You know what I'm saying? Okay, so he is plowing behind the oxen. And this is his view every single day, well, not 24/7, but maybe 10 hours a day. He is plowing behind the oxen. And the only thing he sees, and probably smells, okay, the only thing he sees and he smells as he goes about his business every day are oxen booties. Oxen. Everybody say oxen booties. It sounds like a German emo band, doesn't it? Oxen booties. Anyway, so he is following oxen booties every day of his life, and I wonder, and we should wonder what that might be like. And Stephen Furtick makes the point that some people have monotonous jobs where everybody they see, anything they do, everything they do looks like oxen booties. And now teachers and students have gone back to school this week, and right now school is awesome, isn't it, kids? Like, it's really exciting and joyful and great, and every day it's something new, but pretty soon it's going to get boring. Maybe it's already happened. Pretty soon it's going to get just in this routine, and it's going to be slow and boring and blah, 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 and the teacher goes on and on. And next thing you know, you're not in class, you are staring at oxen booties, right? Or some of you go to your job every day, and every day is the same thing. You get up, drink your coffee, have your breakfast, go to work, eat your lunch, go to work, come home, have your dinner, watch TV, go to bed, and then do it all over again. And next thing you know, you go to work and you're looking at oxen booties all day, right? Can I get it in there? Is that true? Yeah. And some of you are retired. And some of you get up, drink your coffee, have your breakfast, eat your lunch, have a snack, take a nap, have your dinner, watch TV, go to bed, and then do it all over again, right? And next thing you know, you're not looking in the mirror, you're staring at oxen. No, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes you get in a rut with your life. Sometimes you're the lead dog, and I don't know, I wondered if Elijah went on to farmersonly.com just to get himself out there. Because he's living with his mom and dad at home, and he's staring at oxen booties. Anyway, next thing, you lose your passion and you're staring at oxen booties. But what was important for Elisha here is that he was ready. He was ready for when God shows up. He was ready to drop everything and follow Elisha. Notice he didn't make a list of pros and cons. Should I do this career change? He didn't pray on it. Maybe he should have. He didn't go to his counselor. He just went and did it. He was ready. He didn't ask any questions, and because God showed up. And would you be ready if God showed up to follow him? God is here this morning.
Amen.
And are you ready to follow him? God, and maybe some of you following him might be reading the New Testament through the first time. Would you be willing to do what it takes to follow God's call? And the problem is that sometimes we have questions. And so to cultivate faithfulness in your life this week, I want you to think about this, that you don't have to understand fully to be faithful immediately. Elisha didn't ask any questions. He just followed. I told you about Abraham a couple weeks ago, and Abraham, God said, go to the land that I will show you. I'll make you into a great nation. And Abraham went. And he went and he got to Canaan. Remember this? He went to Canaan and he thought he was going to be this great nation, but it was already filled with Canaanites. And then there was a famine, and then he went to Egypt to escape the famine, and there was Pharaoh, and he had a problem with Pharaoh, and it was hard, and he followed God. He followed God through it all, even though it was hard. Elisha didn't do what we tend to do. We tend to want the details. We want to know what's going to happen. We want eyes out. We want T's crossed. And I think if we were to say to God, God, I want the details, I think God would say, you can't handle the details. But he went. He stepped out in faith. Jesus and Peter's in a boat, and he's hanging out with his friends, and they're fishing, and a storm comes up, and then out of nowhere, Peter looks out on the water, and he sees Jesus walking toward him on the water. And Peter goes, whoa, that's cool. And he said, I want to do that. And he says, Jesus, can I do this? And Jesus gives him one word: come. He didn't tell him, you're going to get your feet wet. But, he didn't give him any of the details. He just said, come. Sometimes God just gives us one word, and we have to follow that one word. I don't know if you remember from a couple weeks ago when I told you about my ignominious paddleboard defeat on the water, right? I'm paddling and came in third place in my age group, but last overall. And
third out of three.
And remember, I was out there on the water, literally on the water, and I'm paddling, and I'm lonely, and I'm tired, and I'm exhausted, and I want to quit. And I said, God, what do you want me to hear from you? And he gave me one word. Do you remember that one word was? Pride. God was working on my pride. He was getting me ready for some bad news that I got the very next day. I have a friend named John Winrick. He's a covenant pastor. Actually, he's now in charge of the Start and Strengthen Churches initiative in our denomination. And John has a good quiet time, a good Bible study with himself and God every morning. And he reads his Bible, he spends time in prayer, and he spends some time listening for God to speak to him. And what he's found is that when he listens, sometimes God will give him one word from the day. Justin knows what I'm talking about, and he gives him one word for the day, and sometimes it'll be usually it's a spiritual word like forgiveness, and someone he'll wrong, he's got to forgive that person, or he's got to seek forgiveness from another person. Maybe it's going to be grace, he needs to offer grace to somebody. Well, I don't know if John told us this story this time, but he told me once that one day his word was milk. And he thought, okay, Lord, really, milk? And he tried to spiritualize it like, Israel's a land flowing with milk and honey, and so maybe I'm supposed to plan a trip to the Holy Land. And he thought, no, I think it's concretely milk somehow. And so it's the middle of winter, and he goes about his day, and in the morning he's kind of thinking, okay, where's this milk going to come in during my day? And he goes to work and comes home, kind of forgets about it until about 11 o'clock. And he realizes two things. First of all, it's the middle of winter. The high the next day is going to be 3 degrees. That's one thing he realizes when he's watching the news. The other thing that he realizes is that he hasn't heard anything about milk during the day, and he kind of wonders, well, what is going on? Well, when it's going to be 3 degrees as the high the next day, we, those of us from the Midwest, have a little ritual that we do with some of our cars. And we'll go out and start our car and get it warmed up for like half an hour so that it doesn't freeze overnight. And so that's what John does. And he starts the car, gets it going, gets it warmed up, and he notices the gas gauge is like on 1/8 of a tank. And if it's 1/8 of a tank, they tell you should fill it up, put more gas in it. Because I don't know if it's because of the gas line. I don't know if it's because you don't want to run out of gas when it's only going to be 3 degrees out the next day. So he goes to a nearby gas station, and it's packed. There are cars everywhere. He's like, oh, jeez. And he pulls up to one of the pumps, and he sticks his card in the card reader, pulls it out, and error message. And then there's a little handwritten sign that says, pay cash only inside. Okay. So he pulls out his wallet, he's got a 20, he goes inside. And there's this line, this huge long line in a convenience store. Well, it's like 8 people, but it seems like a long line at 11 o'clock at night. And he's waiting in line, and there's a little woman standing in front of him, and he notices that she's got 2-gallon milk jugs standing right in front of her. And she's holding on to these milk jugs. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is great. And so he taps her on the shoulder, and he turns around, or she turns around, and kind of looks at him crazy and says, excuse me, ma'am, you're going to think this is weird, but I think I'm supposed to pay for your milk tonight. And she says, yeah, that is weird, and no, you're not. I can take care of myself. I'm fine. And it's like, no, really? And she says, if you talk to me again, I'm screaming. Okay. So, the line progresses, and it's her turn, and she puts her milk jugs on the counter, and the guy rings her up, $7.85 or whatever, and she takes off her gloves, and she starts digging through her purse. And she's digging through her purse, and she's like looking, and then she's going like this in the coat, and she's looking all in her pockets, and she can't find her wallet. And now you can see like a bead of sweat underneath her stocking cap, because she's now getting nervous, and she says, to the clerk, and you can hear people like huffing and puffing behind her, and I was writing checks tonight, paying bills, and I must have left my wallet on the counter, and I'm sorry, I'll be right back. And John, who's behind her, says, I'll pay for her milk and put the rest on pump number 12. And so she looks back at him, and he's got this big smile on his face, and they walk out together, and she said, how did you know? And she said, well, I believe that God is real, and I believe in Jesus Christ, and if you want to learn more about him and my relationship with God, you need to come to church on Sunday. And she comes to church on Sunday, and then her family starts coming, and they all become saved. It's a great story, happily ever after. Probably. That's one word, milk. God can speak to you in one word today. So what is your one word? I have another friend, Melissa Wall. She's a covenant pastor, and she spends the whole month of January thinking of what her word for the year is going to be. And one year, that word was hope. And she's a pretty hopeful, joyful person most of the time, and she didn't know what that meant, but she said, I am going to study hope, I'm going to learn about hope. Well, just a couple months later, in May, she gets a diagnosis that she has a brain tumor that needs to be taken out. And that word, that one word, gave her hope. So what's your one word? What is God speaking to you this morning? You don't have to understand fully to be faithful immediately. Well, what faithfulness is all about, and what we see with Elijah, you notice he went and said goodbye to his mom and dad, then he killed the cows, and then he burned the plows. I don't know if you noticed that, but he killed the cows, and then he burned the plows. He returned to his oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. He killed the cows, and he burned the plows so that he could follow God. And maybe there's something in your life that you need to burn. You need plow burning faith, to follow this one word, to follow God in all that he's doing. What is one thing that is standing in your way to following God with all that you are? I have a friend, actually a new friend, Pastor Mike Watkins at Fellowship CME Church down on 19. Great guy. He and I had lunch today. And he said for about 10 years, he was a volunteer pastor at this little church. And he worked full-time and a volunteer pastor. And he felt God was calling him to full-time ministry. And so he burned his plow. He quit his job and told the church, he said, you got to start paying me. I'm not going to be able to survive. My family's not going to be able to survive. I don't know how we're going to do it. Well, 5 years later, they've added 2 new buildings. They're going to buy 6 acres. They're going to build a new fellowship center. Why? Because he burned his plows and killed the cows. Maybe there's something in your life that you need to burn that plow. Now, I don't believe in burning bridges, okay? Don't go to your work and don't quit your job and say, take this job and restaff it. No, don't burn a bridge. And actually, don't burn bridges itself. Just, don't take that literally. But burn, maybe there's a plow that you need to burn at my home church. One of the suburban goals in life is to get a lake house and a boat. Okay, that is like the goal of suburban Chicago, to get a lake house and a boat. So this family, the guy had made it. He worked in the city and he got a lake house and a boat. And he'd come home on Friday from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Every Friday night he'd come home from work at 5:30. His wife would have packed up the kids and the car and everybody, and they would leave and they would drive 4 hours over to Western Michigan. It should only take 2 hours, but because of traffic, it takes 4 hours. They get over to Western Michigan late at night, put the kids to bed, get the house ready. On Saturday morning, he gets up really early, puts the boat in the lake, spends the day on the lake, water skiing, fishing, boating, cruising, doing whatever else you do on a boat all day. They have a great, huge, big barbecue with all their friends for dinner, and then that night they have a bonfire on the beach, and it's fabulous and it's awesome. They shoot out some fireworks. It's fabulous. Sunday morning, they get up, do the same thing for about 6 hours until lunchtime. At lunch is they just eat the leftovers from Saturday night's big, huge barbecue. Then they spend the next 2 hours doing all the dishes, cleaning all the sheets, cleaning up the house, close it all up about 6 o'clock. They get in the car, drive for 4 hours. It should only take 2 hours to get back to their home. And they get up for work on Monday morning, only to do it all again on Friday night, that following Friday. And this is it. This is suburban. This is the apex of what it means to be middle class. This is the best thing ever. Until one Sunday morning, he and his daughter, 9-year-old daughter, they're out on the boat. And she says to him, Daddy, why don't we follow Jesus in the summertime? And he was about ready to say, no, we are Christians. But then he thought, because she said, Jesus said we should follow him and worship God. And we don't worship God in the summertime. And they finished up their great weekend, and that Monday morning he called a realtor and sold the lake house. He burned that plow. And then they became great leaders in the church, and because they were able to commit fully to what God had planned for them. So is there a plow in your life that you got to burn? Is there one word that God has given you this morning so that you could follow him with all that you are? Maybe it takes commitment in reading God's word together over the next 8 weeks. Maybe it takes confession. Maybe God is speaking to you that there's a friend of yours that you need to reconcile with. What plow do you need to burn so that you can be faithful in following Jesus? Let's pray. Dear Lord, there's some things we hold on really tightly. Corrie ten Boom says that we should hold things loosely, otherwise our fingers are broken when we try to open our hands. And Lord, I pray that you would open our hearts this morning, that you would be speaking this morning, speaking one word maybe to one person here who needs to turn to you in faith so that they can be faithful. Lord, I pray that you would give each one of us plow-burning faith, to which we could follow you with all that we are. Lord, I pray that each one of us this morning would take a step of faith. Maybe it's grabbing a Bible this morning, or reading it through over the next 2 months. Maybe it's confessing. Maybe it's selling the lake house on Lake Michigan. Lord, I pray that you would speak this morning to each one of our hearts about what is holding us back from following you with all that we are, so that we can be found faithful in you. Lord, you are faithful to us because of Jesus and his life and his death and his resurrection for us. So may we be faithful to you. Help us, O Lord. Speak. Give us ears to listen. In Jesus' name we pray.